welcome back. So let's get right into it. And Mr. Bolaji Abdullahi, National Publicity Secretary, African Democratic Congress, joins us now on the program. Good morning, sir. Thank you for joining us on the morning brief.
Good morning.
And so we've seen the resolve of the opposition. We saw that meeting yesterday, and most of the leaders there making up leaders of the African Democratic Congress. But the Electoral Act Amendment 2026 is what it is already. It's a law, a document, and INEC has since responded with an announcement of new election dates. So what's the strategy of the opposition to get the ruling party to know that you're serious about your demand for a change or a recommencement of the debate on a new electoral act?
What you watch now, you look at it don't deal because the passed by the National Assembly. It signed horrid by the President. We are the President not actually the bill, or he was part of the process of introducing those provisions in the Act because the bill was unusual and is regular. So you say that part of the.
Pardon me, Mr. Abdullahi. We're having difficulty hearing you, and we'll have to try this again and see if it gets better in a short while. Perhaps we'll take a moment, to perhaps you change your device, your connectivity, such that we can have a better conversation. It's a very important one, especially as we make progress towards the 2027 general elections. It's just 11 months away now to the presidential elections. We want to know your strategy, not just to get the ruling party to know that indeed the opposition is serious, is demanding an electoral act that works for all, but for internal democracy within your party itself, getting the opposition to put its house in order. How prepared will the opposition be ahead of August 2026 when campaigns begin, and prior to that time, April, when primaries should be held? We want to get all of those perspectives such that Nigerians can make up their minds about whether or not the alternative to the ruling party is serious about not just taking power, but of course getting Nigerians to believe that it has a workable manifesto. That's another part of the conversation with which it will deliver on the promises to Nigerians. So let's try this again now. Mr. Abdullahi, first of all, a recommencement of your thoughts. We didn't quite hear you from the beginning on what strategy your party is deploying, and indeed not just the ADC now. The opposition is deploying to get the ruling party to listen to it on its demand for a commencement of the debates on a new electoral act.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, it's better now.
Okay, so thank you very much. What I was going to say was that the Electoral Act, we did all that we could constitutionally within our democratic rights to push for the desire of the Nigerian people on the issue of the Electoral Act. Protests were organized, arguments were made, debates were organized, all in line with the aspiration of Nigerians. And what was the aspiration of Nigerians? Is to ensure that mechanisms were introduced in the Electoral Act that allow for free, fair, and credible election. In the whole conversation about voter turnout is the fact that Nigerians no longer believe that their vote will count. They no longer believe that if they line up and spend hours on the line to vote for whoever they want, whatever they do, the result will reflect the outcome of their will. Nigerians no longer think so, and that is why you see voter turnout continue to decline at every election cycle. So we are saying that the most important thing, especially to underline the issue of legitimacy of government, is to ensure that the confidence of the people is restored in the democratic process. And the only way you can restore the confidence of the people in democratic process is to ensure that the process itself is credible and it has integrity. But what has happened is that the National Assembly, yes, they say they did not eliminate the use of IREV, but what they have done is to grant limitless discretionary power to election officers to decide whether to transmit election results in real time, or even whether to transmit it to IREV at all at the point of voting. So with this, they have created like we call it, a blank check for those who want to rig election. And that is why when we listen to government and their representatives saying that the amendment have improved the election process and have made democracy better, we wonder what planet they exist, because that's what Nigerians are seeing, and it's not what the opposition parties are seeing. We are seeing a government, a ruling party that determined to rig the election by creating a legal loophole that could be exploited for the purpose of stealing people's vote. That is one. Two, but even as serious as Section 63 on transmission of election result is, we consider it to be a mere smoke screen, for the real amendment that the government wanted to achieve, which is Section 84. And Section 84, what did it do? Prescribe the mode of candidate selection for political parties, removing indirect primaries, which is delegate-based selection process, and limiting the options before political parties to just direct election, direct primaries, and what it called consensus. This is the most dangerous amendment to the Electoral Act. Because why is it the most dangerous? It is most dangerous because the government knows that President Bola Tinubu will not be able to go around the country to campaign in 2027. They know. And what they are trying to do is to create a situation where he's the only candidate by introducing these clauses in the Electoral Act to make it impossible for the opposition political parties to produce a candidate within the time limit. If you look at the new timetable that was released by INEC yesterday, it says all primaries must be conducted by May. That is a mere 2 months from now. No, and now 2 months. If you are to adopt direct primaries, it means that you have to conduct a nationwide election, because that's what direct primary means. It means that every member of your political party must vote for the candidate, the aspirant, and it means that from Adamawa to Zamfara, from Abia to Abeokuta, you must conduct election. An INEC level election has to be conducted to produce your candidate. So, is that possible? Is that possible within the time that is produced?
Mr. Abdullahi, we see what you're saying. They also have counter-argument. I think it was Felix Moka, the National Publicity Secretary, that spoke yesterday and talked about the fact that the debate on the opposition to talk about real-time transmission is because they are looking for it. They want to use it as a ground to invalidate the 2027 presidential election. Maybe you respond to that. For him, because he says connectivity is not as effective as is being touted. But we know the Electoral Act clearly says that you must capture that EC8A. It is when that doesn't work out, then from EC8A, which is a physical copy, can be resorted to. But I think we've debated this over and over. Where I'm going to with my questioning, you responding to this is, let's maybe assume without conceding that this was well calculated to further immobilize your opposition, which is what I maintained at the beginning of the program. First, the opposition has been going back and forth as to being able to form a coalition There's no manifesto yet. So if you go to the PDP, you see what's going on. Labour, see what is going on. We understand the ADC has a court case about some deregistering case or all of that. And then this timeline has come out. Amendment has been done. Now everything is like literal rush hour. My question is, this is the reality we're facing now, politically. What is the strategy to respond to have a chance in 2027?
Well, I must say that for us, we know the responsibilities that we have. We know the responsibility we know the responsibility that this has imposed on us, and we are not going to roll over and die on the issue of the Electoral Act, especially in Section 84, which we see as hijacking the independence of political parties, because it's the political parties that have it's at the discretion of political parties to decide what mode to use for their primaries. We are going to approach the Supreme Court, and we believe that we are going to make a strong case for this, because the new Electoral Act undermines the independence of the political parties, and we are going to challenge that at the Supreme Court for interpretation as quickly as possible. We know we don't have a lot of time, but we are going to do that. Number two is to continue to mobilize Nigerians across the board to see exactly what is going on. We believe that no government, no matter how devious, and no matter how is invincible, because the most important thing, that what is clear, is that the APC is doing everything to ensure that what happens in 2027 is the coronation of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Even Abacha tried it with 5 political parties that Bolaji called the 5 fingers of a leprous hand. But at least he tried to create political parties, and he tried to get those political parties to endorse him as their sole candidate. But President Bola Tinubu is not doing that. He wants to clear the field completely, so that by the time we arrive at 2027, it will just be mere coronation. They know the ruling party don't have that problem of selection. They've already unanimously adopted him as their candidate. So they know that what this Section 84 will create is confusion in the ranks of the. But we are not going to give up, and we are not going to be confused. We know exactly what they are trying to achieve, and we are going to sidestep that, and we are going to come up with a candidate that will defeat him in 2027, regardless of whatever they do. Listen, we are talking about real-time transmission of results. Yes, it would have been easier. The election result would have been more objective and credible, and Nigerians would have been able to see it for what it is. But like you said, the law is the law. So, and we have learned important lessons from the FCT election. We have seen that if we arrive at 2027 today, there will be no network in any of the polling units, and there will be no transmission of election results to IRF, and they will use from ECA on their. They will do all that. And that's what we are getting ready for.
Right. I mean, some would ask, are you not barking up the wrong tree, expecting that the same, government will now look into what you want them to look into, seeing that they perceive it puts you at a disadvantage? But I want to just read a few paragraphs of Mr. Bayo Onanuga's statement in response to your position yesterday. And towards the end of the statement, Mr. Bayo Onanuga said, contrary to their deliberate misinformation designed to incite the populace, the new Electoral Act signed by President Tinubu is a significant improvement over the repealed one, closing loopholes the opposition leaders sought to exploit for manipulation. He went on to say, in summary, the opposition is merely crying foul because the rules of the game have been adjusted to prevent manipulation such as result hacking, which they have allegedly perfected. He ended by saying, rather than this constant lamentation and unwarranted outrage, ADC and NNPP leaders should spend more time on retrospection and fix their own mess. So perhaps you want to respond to this, because this is a posturing. If the government is posturing this way, the Senate, where there's majority, would have this similar posture, the House of Reps as well. But you say you're going to court. I want to also speak to the other side, because it's not just the electronic transmission bit. There's also the timetable now that has been moved forward. Do you also see that as a function of what you believe is putting the opposition at disadvantage?
Absolutely, absolutely. You see, let me say this. I mean, you just read a statement from Bayo Ononuga. If you can get him to come on TV to debate this with me, I'll be ready to debate, not just reading his statement. Let him come and debate this with me. Let us sit down and face each other and let him show us how this electoral act that they have passed will improve the transparency and the credibility of the election. You see, what you see about this APC government is that they seem to be irritated that there is opposition at all. They seem to feel like, the response you get from them is, who are these people asking us questions? They would rather we don't speak at all. They would rather nobody ask questions. They would rather nobody challenge them. You can see the kind of language they use, the kind of insultive and denigrating language they use. I was reading the statement released by Felix Moka, the National Public Secretary, and I was wondering, we have children, for God's sake. What are we teaching them? So this is the government that has this sense of indignation each time you ask them questions. We are saying that this electoral act, every Nigerian who is honest, who is not aligned to the ruling party, can see what this electoral act is all about. But they keep digging in and telling us that no, what we see, what is see is not what it's actually. They destroyed something and they are claiming that they have improved. They have improved it. Look, the election of 2027 is all set to be rigged, and we will not stop saying that. We are not giving up. We are not just lamenting, but we have a voice and we will use it. And that's what we are saying. And that's what democracy is all about. They can use the power of government, of incumbency, to do whatever they want to do, but they are not bigger than Nigeria.
So does that mean,
cannot stop us
Mr. Abdullahi, pardon me, does that mean that?
Pardon
me, does that mean you're rejecting the new election timetable as well? That has now moved
the election timetable. The election timetable came out last night. We've not met to review it in detail, but I can tell you here that it is all part of the game plan. Just look at the timetable. By May, we should produce a presidential candidate. APC doesn't need to do that. They already have a presidential candidate. This is February. That means you have only March and April to organize a direct primary, which means that you organize a nationwide election to produce a presidential candidate. You can see what is going on. This is part of the grand conspiracy to hijack 2027. So it's not just like you said, that opposition is what it is. What can we do? Because that's exactly what they are saying. What can you guys do? We are in power and we use our power to do whatever we like. What the hell can you guys do? That's what they are telling us. But we are looking at it and we are not going to give up. And because we know that Nigerians have rejected them, and they know Nigerians have rejected them, that's how they have to come up with all this elaborate scheme. A government that is confident that it has served the people wouldn't need to go through all this rigor to manipulate the electoral system to win the election. But the world is watching, Nigerians are watching.
So, Mr. Abdullahi, what would you say to those who would question the moral ground that some members of the new opposition have, to challenge the electoral act that has been given to Nigerians under the APC government? Because some of the most questionable elections conducted in Nigeria's history were conducted by the People's Democratic Party, and you served in a PDP government yourself under former President Goodluck Jonathan. And in fact, the first term of that administration, led by late Musa Yar'Adua, the former president, God rest his soul, acknowledged that the election that brought him to office was very flawed. So what would you say to those who are questioning the moral ground for this current crop of opposition leaders to demand a better electoral act?
You see, Bukola, I'm shocked you are saying this. I mean, are we justifying what has happened? Are we trying to find excuse for what is going on? Okay, the election has been rigged in the past, therefore is a justification for rigging it now. How does that help this country? How does it help us to move forward? The election of 1997, 2007 that you refer to, that produced President Yaradua. President Yaradua was the first person to come out to say the election that produced me was not credible, but it will never happen again. And that's when he set up the Justice Uwais panel on electoral reform that gave right to, that when President Jonathan took over, he introduced beavers. And you could see in the 2015 election, even when the beavers was not working for President Jonathan, he insisted that it must be you. We must, as a country, build a monument for democracy for President Jonathan. Because if President Jonathan had done half of what they are doing now, the APC will not be in power. And that is why when you make those kind of parallel, you seem to be preparing a soft ground for this kind of shenanigans that is going on. What is going on in this country today has no parallel. It has never happened before. It is unprecedented. And we pray it will be the last time, because Nigerians will show them that no matter how powerful, power still comes from the people. So telling us that, oh, it has been rigged in the past, people have no morals, come on. How does that move us forward? Are we proud as a country to say this, that this is going on at this time? When countries like Ghana and smaller countries, Senegal, Kenya, are conducting elections that nobody can impeach, Liberia, and we as a country, we are quick to say we are a country of 200 and something million people, the biggest black nation in the world, and we can conduct election. When India, that has almost twice our population, can do it. Look, why is Bayo Onunuga speaking for the National Assembly? Read that statement. Why is he defending the National Assembly if they are not in cahoot in all this? Why is he speaking for the National Assembly? National Communication Commission said we can do it. INEC said we can do it. Festus Okoye 3 days ago said that INEC has the capacity to do it. NITCOMSAT has 24/7 coverage of every inch of Nigerian territory. Everybody is saying we can do it.
Well, Mr. Abdullahi,
why is it that it's only APC that is saying we can do it? The same APC that only a few years ago were agitating for electronic voting, not even collation, electronic voting.
Mr. Abdullahi,
your
points are well noted, but it's also important to ask how those who emerge themselves under a flawed process can demand a perfect process. Can they, even were they in office, give Nigerians a perfect process? But clearly it's an ongoing debate, and we must anchor it at this point because we have another place to touch. Mr. Bolaji Abdullahi is a National Publicity Secretary of the African Democratic Congress. Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Yes, we'll take a moment, but there's more politics to be discussed after this timeout. Join us again.